Hey everyone, welcome to this Forge College Explainer. I am so pumped to have you here today. So as we continue navigating our way through Ethereum fundamentals, and specifically the gas mechanics and optimization module, we're diving into a crucial part of our Introduction to Gas Mechanics lesson. Today we're tackling a topic that has caused honestly a lot of headaches, maybe a few heartbreaks, and definitely a ton of confusion. The somewhat chaotic world of Ethereum gas mechanics. More specifically, we're going to break down fee dynamics and historical trends. By the end of this, you'll have the exact tools you need to understand why transaction costs behave the crazy way they do.
Now, if you hung out with us for our previous lesson, we were setting up Solana Cloud tools. And in that environment, we got very used to fees that were, highly predictable and cost just tiny fractions of a cent. It was peaceful, really calm. But over here in the Ethereum mempool, yeah, it's a slightly different story. Get ready for some serious financial whiplash, because we're talking about 50 times price spikes in a matter of minutes. It sounds wild, I know, but I promise you it is not random. And today, we're going to learn exactly how to read the madness. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our engineering blueprint for the day. 1. The setup. 2. The transit model. 3. Demand spikes versus regime shifts. 4. The EIP 1559 redesign. And finally, 5. Estimation tactics.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the setup. Let's understand the network environment.
So, to accurately predict what our transactions are going to cost, we first have to understand the physical reality of the network, like what actually causes these digital traffic jams. Well, that brings us to mempool depth. Think of the mempool as just a giant waiting room. Mempool depth is simply the number of pending transactions sitting in that room, tapping their feet, waiting to be included in the next block. When demand is low, the room's practically empty. But when a highly anticipated event happens, that room gets completely packed, and suddenly everyone is desperately trying to shove through the exact same door at the exact same time.
Moving on to Section 2, the transit model. This is our network analogy. So how does the network actually decide who gets through that door first? Well, a really brilliant way to visualize this is to think of the network as a public transit system. The available block space is simply the number of seats on a bus. The gas price, that's the fare you pay to ride. The mempool is the queue of people standing out at the bus stop. And the priority fee? Well, that's essentially you slipping a crisp $20 bill to the bus driver to let you skip the line and board first. When a massive flash mob hits that bus stop, the standard fares just completely go out the window, and the cost to secure a seat absolutely skyrockets.
Which leads us to Section 3, demand spikes versus regime shifts. We really need to understand exactly why these fares change.
Now, what's really interesting here is how we contrast the two main reasons our bus fares jump up. Take a look at the top row. Here, we have the app spike. Imagine a super hyped-up NFT drop. This is your massive flash mob arriving at the bus stop all at once. Fares can literally spike up to 50 times the normal rate, but it usually only lasts for a few minutes, maybe an hour. The implication for you? You have to use a very short, recent time window to estimate your gas, and just accept you're going to pay a premium for speed. Now contrast that with the bottom row, something like DeFi Summer. This isn't a flash mob. Actually, it's more like a massive brand new corporate office building opening right next to the bus stop. It's a sustained regime shift. Demand is heavily elevated for days, maybe even weeks. In this scenario, you need to update your entire baseline estimate and probably start batching your non-urgent transactions for late-night, off-peak hours.
To put that into perspective, just look at this quick sketch. See that massive orange bar on the left sticking up among all the tiny green ones? That right there is your sudden demand spike. If you try to average your gas estimates using data from before that spike happened, your transaction is absolutely going to get stuck because your bid is way, way too low. Now look at the right side, the regime shift. Notice how the baseline of the green bars is just permanently stepped up? A regime shift means the whole environment has changed. Trying to wait for prices to drop back to the old normal will literally leave you waiting for weeks.
All right, on to Section 4, the EIP 1559 redesign. Let's look at the new ticketing rules.
So we know how user demand changes the prices, but what happens when the transit authority decides to completely rip out the ticketing machines and change the rules? Well, before the major EIP 1559 update, the network ran on what we call a blind first price auction. Basically, everyone at the bus stop just shouted out a number they were willing to pay, completely blind to what everyone else was bidding. Actually, scratch that. It was more like being in a pitch-black room full of people just screaming random numbers. It caused these chaotic bidding wars and massive overpayments. Post-1559, they redesigned it.
The cost was split into two distinct parts, a mandatory algorithmic base fee and a market-driven priority tip.
I can't overstate this. This was a massive paradigm shift for how we predict our costs. The base fee is now determined purely by math. An algorithm checks exactly how full the last bus was, and then mathematically adjusts the base fare up or down for the next one. And fun fact, that fee is then burned. But the priority fee? Okay, that is still the Wild West. That is the tip you offer to incentivize the driver to pick you first. So modern gas estimation tools now have to completely separate the predictable, boring math of the base fee from the wildly unpredictable human-driven market of the priority tip.
Bringing it all together in Section 5, Estimation Tactics. Let's give you some actionable heuristics.
The absolute most crucial takeaway here is to never, ever blindly trust an automated gas estimator without running through these 3 quick transit model questions in your head first. Number 1, is there a sudden event causing a spike right now? If yes, expect a flash mob. Number 2, did the protocol just change its rules? If yes, your old historical data is totally useless. And number 3, is your transaction highly time sensitive? Because if it is, you're going to need to heavily tip the driver.
Honestly, I want you to burn this golden rule right into your brain. Weight recent blocks heavily for sudden spikes, but update your entire baseline for sustained regime shifts. If you can master the intuition of knowing when to look at a 5-minute historical window versus a 5-day historical window, I promise you're going to save yourself a tremendous amount of frustration, failed transactions, and frankly, wasted funds.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty massive question. Right? We know what the base fee and the priority tip are conceptually, but how do we actually go in and measure and separate those components when we're looking at real live transactions on the blockchain? Well, you guessed it, that's exactly what we are going to tackle in our next lesson, fee components and how to measure them. Until then, thank you so much for joining me for this Forge College Explainer. To continue your learning journey, dive way deeper into this subject, and explore a ton of other Web3 topics, head on over to forge.college. I'll see you guys in the next one.